Most people talk to others all day now. Messages, notifications, group chats, endless communication. And yet, more people feel emotionally alone than ever before. Modern life made human connection instant, but somehow, it also made it feel less real. For most of human history, human connection felt physical. People shared silence together, shared spaces together, shared presence together. But modern life changed the way people experience each other completely. Now conversations move faster. Attention moves faster. Relationships move faster. And maybe that's why so many people secretly feel disconnected now. Not because humans stopped communicating, but because modern life slowly changed what real connection actually feels like. Human beings were never this connected before, and somehow they were never this lonely either. Every day, people send hundreds of messages, react to stories, scroll through endless conversations, stay surrounded by digital communication constantly. But many still end the night feeling emotionally disconnected anyway. That's because communication is not the same thing as connection. And modern life quietly blurred the difference between the two. For most of human history, human connection required presence. People spent time together physically, shared silence together, shared boredom together, shared ordinary moments together. But modern life replaced much of that with permanent digital interaction. Now, conversations happen instantly. Quick replies, short messages, small reactions, constant contact without real emotional depth. And at first, the brain mistakes this for closeness because stimulation creates the feeling of social activity. Notifications feel like interaction, messages feel like attention. But emotionally, many people still feel unseen underneath all of it. That's why someone could talk to people all day and still feel deeply lonely at night, because emotional connection requires something slower. Attention, presence, vulnerability, and modern communication rarely leaves space for those things anymore. Everything moves too fast now. People answer while distracted, listen while scrolling, talk while thinking about something else. Even silence during conversations became uncomfortable. The modern brain expects constant stimulation now. And maybe that's why relationships often feel emotionally thinner than they used to. Not because humans stopped caring about each other, but because modern life slowly trained attention to become fragmented, partially present everywhere, fully present almost nowhere. That's exhausting emotionally because the nervous system can detect when connection feels incomplete, even if people cannot explain it directly. That's why crowded places often feel strangely lonely now. Subways full of silent people staring at glowing screens. Friends sitting together while scrolling separately. Couples sharing rooms without sharing attention. Everyone connected digitally, but emotionally somewhere else. And maybe that's the strangest part about modern loneliness. People are surrounded by communication constantly, while quietly starving for real human presence underneath it all. Modern life made communication easier than ever before. But easier communication does not always create deeper connection. Sometimes it does the opposite, because real human connection requires things modern life slowly removed. Time, attention, presence, patience. And most people no longer experience those things consistently anymore. Conversations became shorter, faster, more distracted. People reply while walking, while scrolling, while thinking about something else entirely. Attention became divided constantly, and eventually, relationships started feeling emotionally thinner. That's why many conversations now feel strangely temporary. Quick reactions, small replies, short attention spans, constant contact without emotional depth. The nervous system can feel the difference even when people don't consciously notice it. Because humans were never designed to connect through fragmented attention all day. Real connection requires emotional presence, the feeling that another person is truly there with you mentally. But modern life keeps pulling attention away every few seconds. Notifications interrupt conversations. Phones interrupt silence. Algorithms interrupt focus. And over time, people become physically present while emotionally distracted somewhere else. That changes relationships more than most people realize. Because humans can sense partial attention emotionally. Even silence feels different now. Years ago, people could sit together quietly without discomfort. Now, many people immediately reach for stimulation during pauses. Phones, music, scrolling, anything to fill the silence quickly. And maybe that's why so many relationships feel emotionally restless now. Because modern attention struggles to stay still long enough for deeper connection to fully develop. Everything moves too quickly. People meet quickly, text constantly, disappear quickly, replace each other quickly, and after enough time, the brain quietly starts expecting relationships to feel temporary too. That's emotionally exhausting because human beings still crave something slower underneath all of it. Attention that feels complete, conversations without distraction, silence that feels comfortable instead of awkward, the feeling that someone is fully there beside you for a moment. And maybe that's why modern connection sometimes feels strangely empty now. Not because people stopped needing each other, but because modern life made real emotional presence increasingly rare. One of the loneliest feelings in modern life is feeling emotionally unseen while surrounded by people. And many people experience that feeling constantly now. At work, in relationships, inside friendships, even inside crowded rooms full of conversation. Because being around people is not the same thing as feeling emotionally understood. And modern life became very good at creating interaction without real emotional closeness. That's why so many people secretly feel disconnected, even when they technically have social lives. The nervous system can sense when connection feels incomplete, when conversations stay surface level, when attention feels divided, when nobody is fully present emotionally. And over time, that creates a strange kind of loneliness. Not physical isolation, emotional isolation. The feeling that people see your personality, but not your inner world. That's why many modern conversations feel strangely repetitive now. Small talk, quick jokes, short reactions, endless communication without emotional depth. People stay connected constantly, while avoiding vulnerability almost completely, because vulnerability became uncomfortable in modern culture. People learned how to present themselves, how to appear confident, funny, interesting, successful, but many forgot how to openly express fear, confusion, loneliness, emotional exhaustion, and social media made that even harder. Because modern platforms reward performance more than honesty. People show polished versions of themselves constantly. Filtered emotions, filtered lifestyles, filtered personalities. And after enough exposure, many people begin feeling pressure to hide the messy parts of being human. That's emotionally exhausting because human connection becomes weaker when people feel unable to be emotionally honest. Relationships start feeling performative too. People talk, but don't fully open themselves emotionally. They communicate without truly feeling understood. And eventually, many people begin feeling lonely even around people who care about them. Because care alone is not always enough. Human beings need emotional visibility. The feeling that another person genuinely understands something real about them. Their fears, their exhaustion, their inner thoughts, their emotional reality beneath daily life. But modern life keeps attention moving too fast for that kind of connection to happen naturally. Everything encourages speed now. Fast conversations, fast relationships, fast entertainment, fast distraction, very little stillness, very little emotional patience. And maybe that's why people miss connection so deeply now. Not because humans stopped loving each other, but because modern life slowly removed many of the conditions real connection depends on: stillness, presence, attention, emotional honesty, the ability to sit together without needing constant stimulation between every quiet moment. And maybe that's why loneliness feels heavier late at night, because nighttime removes distraction for a while. The world becomes quieter. Notifications slow down. Conversations stop. And suddenly, many people notice how emotionally disconnected they felt underneath the noise all day. Not abandoned, not completely alone, just emotionally unseen in ways they struggle to explain clearly. And maybe that's the strange thing about modern loneliness. Sometimes it has nothing to do with how many people are around you. Sometimes it comes from feeling emotionally distant from everyone while surrounded by communication constantly. Maybe the biggest problem with modern connection is that people are rarely fully present with each other anymore. Attention became fragmented, divided between screens, notifications, thoughts, stress, endless stimulation happening quietly in the background all the time. And eventually, distraction stopped feeling unusual. It became normal life. That changes human relationships more deeply than most people realize. Because real connection depends on attention, not partial attention, complete attention. The feeling that another person is mentally there with you for a moment. But modern life keeps interrupting that constantly. People check phones during conversations, scroll during meals, reply while doing something else. Even moments that once felt emotionally intimate now compete with endless digital noise. And after enough time, many people stop experiencing uninterrupted human presence completely. That affects the nervous system emotionally, because humans can feel when attention is divided, even without words, even without obvious rejection. The brain notices small things: delayed eye contact, distracted replies, moments where someone is physically present, but emotionally somewhere else entirely. And eventually, relationships begin feeling emotionally thinner. Not because people stopped caring, but because modern attention became too scattered to sustain deep connection naturally. That's why many people feel strangely disconnected after spending hours online. The brain receives communication constantly, but very little emotional grounding. Messages arrivent endlessly. Notifications appear endlessly. But the nervous system still feels emotionally restless underneath all of it, because stimulation cannot fully replace human presence. And maybe that's why silence between people feels more uncomfortable now. The modern brain became dependent on constant input. Phones fill pauses immediately. Music fills quiet spaces immediately. Distraction appears the moment conversation slows down. Very few people still experience uninterrupted stillness together anymore. And those quiet moments used to matter more than people realize. Long conversations, silent car rides, late night walks, sitting together without needing entertainment every few seconds. That's where emotional closeness often developed naturally. But modern life keeps interrupting those spaces constantly. Everything competes for attention now. Apps compete for attention. Platforms compete for attention. Algorithms compete for attention. And human relationships quietly compete with all of it too. That's exhausting emotionally because the nervous system still wants something simple underneath all the stimulation. Presence, undivided attention, the feeling of being emotionally felt by another person for a moment, not processed quickly, not reacted to instantly, not half listened to while scrolling, just fully heard. And maybe that's why modern connection sometimes feels incomplete even when people communicate constantly, because communication became endless, while real attention became increasingly rare. Maybe human beings were never meant to feel this connected to the world, while feeling this disconnected from each other. Modern life gave people constant communication, constant updates, constant access to one another. But somewhere along the way, many people stopped feeling truly present with each other emotionally. And maybe that's why loneliness feels different now. Quieter, harder to explain, because many people are no longer physically alone most of the time. They're surrounded by messages, screens, voices, notifications, and yet something still feels emotionally missing underneath all of it. Maybe what people miss is not communication itself. Maybe they miss presence, real presence, the feeling that someone is fully there beside them for a moment, without distraction, without performance, without constantly looking somewhere else. And maybe that's why modern life feels emotionally exhausting sometimes, because attention became fragmented everywhere, pulled between screens, thoughts, stress, noise, while the nervous system still quietly searches for something slower underneath it all. Stillness, attention, connection that feels real enough to emotionally rest inside for a while. Maybe that's why certain moments feel strangely comforting now. Late night conversations, quiet car rides, rain against the window while someone sits beside you silently. Small moments where the world briefly stops demanding attention from every direction. Moments where people stop performing for a while and simply exist together. Because maybe human connection was never supposed to feel this fast. Maybe people were never meant to constantly communicate, while rarely feeling emotionally seen underneath it all. And maybe that's why so many people still feel lonely now. Not because nobody is around them, but because real presence became rare in a world full of endless communication. And sometimes, all the human mind is really searching for is the feeling that another person is truly there beside it again. The emotional weight people avoided all day becomes easier to hear. Stress, loneliness, mental fatigue, the strange feeling that the mind has been awake for too long without rest. And maybe that's the real reason so many people feel disconnected now. Not because modern life removed emotion, because it overloaded the nervous system until emotion became difficult to process clearly. The human brain needs pauses, stillness, recovery, silence. But modern life keeps attention emotionally activated constantly. So eventually, people begin confusing distraction with recovery, noise with comfort, stimulation with peace. And maybe that's why true calmness feels so rare now. Because deep down, the modern mind no longer remembers what emotional quiet feels like. Maybe that's all most people are really searching for now. Not more notifications, not more noise, not more endless communication. Just a moment where connection feels real again. A moment where attention slows down, where silence feels comfortable, where another human being feels fully there beside you for a while. And maybe that's why certain quiet moments feel unforgettable somehow. Because in a world that keeps pulling attention in every direction. Real presence became rare. So rare that even small moments of genuine connection now feel emotionally heavy, like something the human mind has been missing for a very long time.